guys, it's Hannah, and today I'm going to review A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is a book that was recommended to me for quite a long time, and it's been one that has been on my radar, and I started the show, and within the first episode I was really hooked, so I thought, okay, I'm actually going to read the book. So for me it was show then book, granted I've had it for ages. I went through this fairly quickly, especially considering the size. It's about, is it close to 600 pages? Yeah, it's close to 600 pages. And I went through it in a couple days, not long at all. So first and foremost, I would really like to say that I enjoy Deborah's style of writing. That's a big factor for me when it comes to enjoying a book. If I don't enjoy the writing style, even if the plot's good, I'm very underwhelmed by the book. As a writer, I value writing. Even just the simplest things and the way that she chose to phrase her sentences to make them a little bit more interesting and not like, I've heard it a million times, it's just even the order of her words. Like, it was just great. I made a couple notes, so I'm just coming back to that. Oh, right. So the genre is more like, I guess, a fantasy. What would this technically be considered? Yeah, I guess more along the lines of fantasy. Maybe not like hardcore fantasy. I don't even know the terminology. That's how not into this genre I am. I haven't read anything paranormal even, or supernatural or anything of the sort since, no, maybe it was my first year of high school. Anyway, it's been a long time since I've read this, especially since I've far since graduated college, if that puts it into perspective at all. And so for me, for that reason, this book very much was a breath of fresh air from the genre that I've been reading. And even though books within this genre, how many times can I say genre, are oftentimes very predictable, despite the typical tropes that are usually there, I was still very much entertained by the book, by the characters, and I just overall really liked it. So much so that I planned out my day where I would wake up earlier to finish a chapter, or I would stay up later to finish a chapter. Like when I was at work, I was thinking about this book. Like I brought it in my car. If I was a couple minutes early to work, I would sit there and wait to the dot to walk in to just spend a little more time with it. So I really loved it. That's kind of it for the non-spoiler section of this. I'm going to talk more into the details and events that happen within the book. So if you are wanting to read it and you don't want to be spoiled as far as points on plot go, now's your time to come back when you have read it. If I were to compare it to the show, at first I actually thought I liked the show a lot more until like the last episode. Then I was like, it just didn't translate. Matthew as a character in the first book, I'm going to do my best not to talk about the second book because I felt very differently in the second book. This is definitely the standout for me so far in the series. I'm on to the third, and honestly, I just took a break. I just needed a break from the genre. But him as a character in this, like, I like him. Is he the most developed character? No, but I feel like I understand his motivations. Like, he makes sense, which not often is the case with especially male leads in romance novels, which is a genre I've read a bit, so I appreciate that at least. So let's talk about the three different types of, I want to say species, is that the correct term? But the daemons, vampires, and witches thing. I'm into the third book. You'd think by now I would kind of have a grasp of the real, not necessarily purpose, but kind of point of the demons in this. They could have just as easily said, okay, it's just these two species, and without spoiling, kind of made that a big point in place of the demons. Basically, I just don't see the point of them. I just don't. I don't know if the third book they're going to really come into play, and in which case, if they do, I feel like that's too late in the series for them to really come into play. I get how they actually do. I will feel so bad if I spoil the second book. I'm trying not to say, because I can't remember where it stopped. I don't know, this isn't too big of a spoiler, so I'll go ahead and say it. But with the two demons that were having a child that's a witch, again, they could have just as easily made it to where two witches that were having a vampire, or two vampires that were having a, like, you know what I mean? They could have easily changed that in the story. I just don't see the point. I don't feel like they're necessary. It maybe shouldn't have been in the book at all. That's my big complaint in this. And I also, maybe it's because I'm a big horror movie junkie and I feel like I know a lot of tropes, but generally speaking, you kind of get the vibe of what a vampire is. You kind of get the vibe of what a witch is. Yes, each book has their own little differences and stuff, but generally you get the picture. But then with the demon thing not being a demon, but more of a daemon, and I'm like, I've never even heard of this before. I just didn't know going into it, so I felt very confused by their, like, what they were about. Like, they were really creative. Like, okay, what makes that... Do you see what I'm saying? That always confused me. If you have a clearer insight of this, please explain to me in the comments. Desperately would love to know. That's just like my big thing that I got so hung up on. And while I'm talking for ages on this, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it just bugged me so much. The suspense in this, I guess I can talk on that. Very, very good. It actually got me wanting to read suspense novels, which actually got me to pick up, and partially, Verity by Colleen Hoover, which I'm about to review actually. The suspense was very well done. I loved her descriptors. I think I saved some. Haha, I did save one. On my way out the door, I stopped and surveyed my rooms. Something niggled at me. A forgotten appointment, a deadline. There was something I was missing that was important. The sense of unease wrapped around my stomach, squeezed, then let go. After checking my date book and the stacks of mail on my desk, I wrote it off as hunger and went downstairs. Love the way she phrases things. I loved her descriptors. I think that was the only thing I saved, unfortunately, but from the first book at least. It's been a bit since I reviewed a book, so please forgive me if this is short or lacking in any way. If there are some points as a general status for reviews you'd like me to include, like favorite part, what did I think of the climax, I guess stuff like that. For me, the climax was pretty late in the book. On this, I'm like answering my own question that I didn't really pose for myself, but it was effective enough. It felt kind of placed, but I didn't care that much. Again, I'm okay with a character-driven story rather than a plot-driven story, and I feel like of the two books, this and the second one, the Book of Shadows, is that what it's called? Or no, Shadow of Night, something. This was more successful as far as plot and climax goes. I feel like there wasn't one in the second one at all. Anyway, if you want me to add things on in the future for other reviews, go ahead and let me know. Constructive criticism is always welcome, and I will see you guys next time.